Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerized, astounded, and entertained. Now. Hello and welcome to another episode of Veterans to Success, the podcast where I get to speak to seemingly ordinary people who have extraordinary stories. And today I've got with me Vince Scott. Vince, hello, how are you doing? Thanks for coming on the show.
Hello, Joe. How are you doing? Great to be here.
I'm fantastic. Thanks for asking. How are you?
It's another beautiful day here in the summertime.
Yeah, and you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to work out that you're not from the UK. You're over the pond, aren't you? And it's pretty warm there, isn't it, at the minute?
It is. I'm from over the pond in the south, but I've had a lovely 3 years in Yorkshire in the UK in my past as part of my Navy experience. So I'm pretty familiar.
Right. Oh, you've spilled the beans straight away, mate. Because I know we were going to do a reveal as we go along, and straight away you've come straight in Navy. Right. Okay.
The reveal. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about
but I mean, we've got a while before we come to that, and it's quite an exciting, interesting, and engaging story, if you don't mind me asking. Before we jump in there, though, what I'd like to do is get a feel for what was going on in your life as a young boy. What was your surrounding, family, environment, and stuff like that. So tell me a bit about your life before the military.
I grew up in the central United States, out in a state, the state of Missouri, and my grandparents owned a 250-acre ranch that was wooded, and we had horses mostly. So we raised and maintained and boarded horses when I would, sort of 0 to 12 time frame. So just I had a really great childhood. I got to fish and hike and hunt and all that jazz there in the central United States. Went to private school for the most part, private Lutheran school actually in the United States. There in the central United States, there's a big Lutheran section. And so got a really great education from them sort of through primary school. And then I went away to boarding military high school. So I am somebody who, from little on had sort of said, hey, I really want to be in the military. Some kids are that way. I was one of those kids. So actually convinced my parents to send me to military school. So I went to Admiral Farragut Academy, which is a boarding military school in St. Petersburg, Florida. And had a fabulous time there. Really enjoyed, being part of the cadet battalion there.
So you mentioned that you were brought up by your grandparents. You were living there on a ranch. Where were your parents? What were they getting up to?
Yeah, so we had some challenges there, right? So my mom and dad had divorced early. My mom had some challenges. I did spend a lot of time with the grandparents there. But always felt well taken care of. I was an only grandchild, and so I had lots of lots of support around all the time when I was growing up. I'm extremely grateful for.
And thank you for that. And you know, the score when we chat is conversational, and you can talk about stuff that you feel comfortable with. I just want to really hone in on the fact that, because so far your life, from what you've told us, your life was idyllic, right? And I know from our chat that wasn't exactly the case. So if you want,
not always so idyllic, yes.
yeah. So if you want to elaborate on it, because one of the things that I find right and really interests me, it isn't about uncovering any hidden secrets. It's more about people, the listener, understanding what the chemistry is, what the makeup of is of someone who goes into the military, if you know what I mean. And there are different folks for different strokes, or different strokes for different folks. So if you could just elaborate a little bit, so much as you feel comfortable with, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I think that's completely fair. My mom and dad divorced young. My mom, then I sort of had a series of broken relationships on her part. So ended up returning to the ranch quite a bit as part of that. Um, it certainly was something that very easily could have been, pointed to as reasons to not succeed, right? Same way with military school, right? I described military school as, hey, I had a great time. But you could also look at that as, hey, I was shuffled off to military school, at some point. And that wasn't, I don't know that I take any special credit, because I never let that affect me that way. Right. And I think the point that you're getting at is that luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparation, right?
Yeah.
So how you approach those things, right? Those challenges that life throws your way can be really important. I was very focused on, no, really, I'm going to do this thing in the military, right? Military school was actually something I drove for and then stayed with because it insulated me to a certain extent. From disruptions, right? And luckily enough, my grandmother was able to pay for that, right? She was able to make sure that I was able to stay there, and that was stable, and that was good.
Yeah.
Oh, and that was a great opportunity. It was also a great opportunity that I was able to take advantage of, and be the cadet battalion commander and be the valedictorian, and earn a slot at the United States Naval Academy, which it just could have been very different. And I can't explain why I was so focused from little on in being in the military, right? So I remember being at grandmother's house, very, 8 years old, pulling the encyclopedias off the wall and reading the Army and the Navy and the Air Force sections, memorizing all the ranks, right, in the US military, realizing I couldn't really understand the ranks in the UK military quite the same, because they were different. They looked very different. And Yeah, so that was just very much of where I was at as a young child, and so I was fortunate to sort of have that level of focus that really helped.
And thank you. I'm pleased that I was able to draw that out of you, because you said a few things that were interesting and something that I really hone in on, because it's like me, for instance, and when I was 14, I got hit by a car, broke both my legs, paralyzed my arm, died 3 times on the roadside, in a coma 10 days. Right. Would I do it again? Yeah, I probably would. I could do without the pain. I'd say just missed that pain out. It's
Just
what
take
it's what it taught me though, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned the thing, luck is not luck as people think. Like, oh, you're really lucky you are. Yeah, right. Okay. It took me 20 years to be this lucky. On Arnold Palmer, yeah, the more I practice, the luckier I get. Went for the hole in one.
Right. Yeah, no, it's another great one.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that luck stands for labor under correct knowledge. Labor under correct knowledge. And and
Okay.
and you said something about you took advantage of the opportunity.
Yes.
You didn't say, woe is me. You didn't say, I can't do this because I'm unlucky. You didn't do that. What you did in fact was take advantage of the opportunity. You studied as a young boy, you were looking at all the ranks in the military, encyclopedias. I guess if you're living on your grandparents' 250-acre site, you probably did a little bit of hard graft, hard work.
Yeah, no, there was a little bit of mowing and taking care of the horses, and some of
Yeah.
that went on. Absolutely true. I did get to learn, what that meant, right?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So at military school, right? So yeah, I've got to grips with that now. So I couldn't leave it where everything was great and everything was great because everything may have been great in your head. The fact is that you did have ups and downs and challenges. So then you got to military school, you knew all the ranks in the US military, right? The UK, it confused me as well, mate, if I'm honest. But until I got shouted at, and then I picked it up pretty quickly. So how did military school go to Naval Academy, and what was going on there?
Yeah, so Admiral Farragut was originally started in the 20s as a feeder school for the Naval Academy. In the modern context, it doesn't really hold that status anymore. It's just more of a college prep school. But it's still everybody wears a uniform. The US has what I think is an absolutely fabulous program that they call Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, right? And that is something that exists at high schools, military schools or not, across the country, and
Right.
all the different services have
Yeah.
versions of it. And it's really a great way to take young people, um, have them wear a uniform, have them learn to march, have them pick up some discipline, have them get their head screwed on straight a little bit. And I think it adds a lot of value across the United States.
And what age is that implemented?
It's high school in the United States, so it's ninth grade through 12th grade.
Right. Okay. And is that everybody or just a certain sector?
Where I was going to school, it was everybody. So everybody was part of the NGRTC program, overlapped on the school. In most high schools, it exists in public high schools in the United States too, and it's a subset of the high school.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because, there's big questions going on at the minute about whether national service would work or some form of citizenship where you learn about teamwork, discipline, making your bed, which is a big thing because you know as well as I do, that making your bed isn't just about hospital corners and tucking it in. There's a lot more that goes into it, the psychology, and about teamwork and respect and all that sort of stuff. So and it's interesting. I just want to pick up on that. So how important do you think that is in an education environment, and what sort of difference do you think it makes to the ninth graders?
Oh, I think it's hugely important. Um, I have a cousin of mine who wasn't doing very well, um, got moved by his parents into a high school that had a JROTC program, and it really turned his life around, right?
All
He
right.
was headed in a very bad direction. He wasn't a bad kid, but he just, he was making some not good choices on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, yeah.
And, one of the things that it's all volunteer. So in the United States, people don't have to, you don't have to be a member of that. But hey, I'm wearing a uniform, so I want to look better. I want to take better care of myself.
Yeah.
Whether I'm doing a good job of it or not, maybe another, but opportunity to, hey, I look better. I look
Yeah.
good, right? Hey, I want to get ribbons. And the NGRTC program in the United States gives a ribbon for everything, right? But
Right.
it's part of motivating the kids because they're like, oh, I can earn this one and I can earn that one and I can wear all my merit badges every day to school, and everybody at school sees me with all my merit badges, right? That's oh, and if I don't, you know, play by the rules, then hey, hey, we're going to go, the drill team's going to go here and we're going to do this, and they were going to get a ribbon out of going in there and doing that, but you can't go now because you didn't make your grades, or you got in a fight, or whatever that disciplinary part of that is. It gives a lot of tools
Yeah.
to the adult leaders in the school to sort of encourage good behavior, discourage bad behavior, and teach the kids good lessons,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so I think it's an absolutely fabulous program.
Fantastic. I mean, like looking at you now, you might be listening to this on audio. If you watch it on YouTube, for instance, you'll see that you have gone to the effort. You've got your navy polo shirt on, right? So it's all about getting in the mode, isn't it? Becoming whatever you need to become for that period of time, so you can be the best that you can be. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and life is not fair. It's not gonna be fair. That's just not part of the plan. However, what you have to do is adapt to what gets thrown at you to maximize your own success and your own happiness,
Mm.
right? You've got to take those curveballs that life throws your way and adapt. And the way that you do that, I talked about preparation and opportunity previously, right?
Yeah.
you know that sometimes means um, doing things ahead of time, not waiting until there's a crisis. It's one of the things I talk about all the time now in
Yeah.
business is crisis avoidance, right? Hey, we need to do this today. It's not a crisis today, and maybe it's not a problem if I don't do it today, but I do it tomorrow.
Mm.
But we need to get this done today so that next month or 6 months from now, it's not a crisis.
Yeah.
And I see that in our business and our clients that we work with, where something comes up and we go, well, that's not a crisis because we've already taken care of that. That's all there. All we have to do is, X, Y, and Z, and we're good and we're moving on completely, blip on the radar that it seems easy
Yeah.
or lucky. Well,
Yeah.
no.
It's structured preparation, planning. Yeah.
Preparation, yeah.
And while you were saying that, actually, there's something that I always, what I believe in and I always implement is something is at first important to do, then it becomes critical, and then it becomes a crisis if you've not recognized it when it was important. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever read Stephen Covey's, um, gosh, what is the name of that book? Seven Habits of
Yeah.
Highly Effective
Highly
People.
affected people. Yeah.
Yeah,
Read it
in
a
there,
few
great
times.
book for anybody who's, think I read it. My wife, my girlfriend at the time, actually gave it to me when I was a young lieutenant.
Yeah.
I It's always been a basis for me going forward. In there is a diagram of quadrant one is urgent and
That's
important.
right. Yeah.
Quadrant two is urgent and not important. Quadrant three is urgent but not important.
Yeah.
And quadrant four is not urgent and not important. So
Yeah.
quadrant four is like play, right?
Yeah.
And quadrant one is crisis management. And when you see people who are dominated by quadrant one, everything is a crisis.
Yeah.
Every time they turn around, they have another disaster happening that
Yeah.
requires everything and all kinds of extra allocation of resources, time, money, effort, whatever to fix.
Yeah.
They're not spending enough time in quadrant two,
Mm.
where it's important but not urgent.
No, no, dude.
Right. So,
Yeah.
and that's the preparation phase. That's where, hey, I really need to do this, but it's not a crisis today. By spending time in quadrant two, you reduce the number of crises in your life.
Yeah. And the people who live in quadrant one are usually not the best of health either. And that's no coincidence.
Yeah.
No coincidence
It
whatsoever.
causes all kinds of problems. They're moving, and some people get comfortable in that and actually enjoy the crisis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You see that sometime in business, right? So you have people who are, spend all their time in crisis management. The sort of chaos appeals to them, and they're good at it, and they're good at managing a crisis. But that's not good for your life or for your business,
No,
really.
no, it's
You
not.
want to, hey, let's get ahead of the power curve. Let's be in the crisis prevention business.
Yeah,
Um, and that then there's going to be more luck in your life.
definitely. So you spell the Admiral Academy. Is it Fargate?
Farragut, Farr
F
A
A R R
Agut.
A G U. All right, got you. Right.
And he was one of the famous Civil War admirals in the United States.
Thank you. Thank you for that history lesson. I'll look that up now. Okay, so you were obviously enamored, pleased with the academy. So your name's still not on the list, i.e., you've still not signed up yet, though. So what
Hmm. Yes, I went.
encouraged you to sign up? What was it that said, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
going?
so I said I wanted to go in the military, right? I'm at military school, but even before this, I had formulated that this is part of the reason I went to military school. I said, hey, I want to be in the military. Great. My dad had served one hitch in the Air Force, right? I had some great uncles who had been in World War II. There were various people around my family who had served. My grandfather had served. He had been in the Army Air Forces in World War II, etc. So
Yeah,
all of those people around had said, well, if you're going to go in the military, be an officer. What's the best way to go in the military? Hey, you're going to get paid more. You're going to get more responsibility. If that's what you really want to do, you want to be an officer. Great. Okay, cool. So what's the best way to be an officer? Well, to go to an academy. Um, in the United States, right, we have um, colleges / universities that are run by each one of the military services. So they're a fully accredited 4-year college or university, but they're run by the Army or run by the Air Force or run by
yeah,
the Navy. So in
right.
the
Okay,
United
got you.
States, right, most people have heard of West Point. I think
Yeah,
even UK, right? Well, that's a college. It's owned by the Army. It's a service academy, is what they're termed, right? Collectively. I went to the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, all right, and West Point, Annapolis. The Air Force Academy is in Colorado Springs, and nobody uses that. It's much younger. We actually have a Merchant Marine Academy in New York as well, and a Coast Guard Academy, right? So we have multiple different service academies that you can go through in order to be in the U.S. military. That's not the only way to become an officer in the U.S. military. Most people who become an officer in the military go to a regular college, and then while they're at the regular college, do the Reserve Officer Training Corps, which
right.
is wear a uniform part-time. So the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps in high school is actually, hey, a good idea based off of ROTC occurring in college. Let's spread that concept to high school to help high school kids.
Yeah, right.
um and that is working really well. But in college, right, you're going to college, you're taking classes 3 days a week, you wear your uniform, and you come out as a reserve officer in the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, etc., depending on which ROTC you went through. That's where most of the officers come from. We've got a few more schools on this list in the United States. Virginia Military Institute, the Citadel, Norwich, Texas A&M, and Virginia Tech. There are 5 military schools founded in U.S. law in the United States that also are sort of feeder schools for the military. There's a higher propensity of officers from those schools as well. And so, but the academies are, hey, what's the best way to do this is to go to a service academy. And so that was very much on my radar. And part of the reason why I went to military school is I went to my grandmother and said, hey, I'm not getting enough. I went to 1 year of public high school in Florida. There had been problems. My grandmother had moved to Florida. I was living with her. And I was like, hey, I'm just not learning enough. I'm not getting enough. I'm afraid if I get in, I won't be able to pass at the academy because the academics here are not good. And so she sent me to Farragut as a part of that. But the acceptance rate for the service academies in the United States is very low. They normally have, and by the way, I do admissions for the Naval Academy on the side as a volunteer effort today. So I help young today understand what they need to do and get their applications together. And ultimately, I provide an interview to the Academy about their suitability. They're about 10 to 1, right? So you get about 17,000 applicants a year, and they accept 1,250, 1,300.
Right. Okay.
So
that's a big attrition. Yeah, got you.
Yeah, they're considered to be in the most competitive universities in the United States.
Right, got you. So you join up. What's it looking like when you on your first day?
Oh, I got my butt kicked. I was So I'd been going to military school and done pretty well. And yeah, I got hammered my first year, which is very much a part of the academy experience, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Same over here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you think you got this under control, Mr. 18-year-old? Well, have I got news for you? So yeah, it was extremely challenging, mentally, physically, academically, and that's by design, right? At the U.S. service academies, they have a quote unquote plebe year, right? So your first year as an underclassman, you're a plebe. You have to march or run everywhere. A lot of discipline, etc. But also, one of the things that's really, really cool about the Naval Academy and West Point in particular is they have what they call plebe rates, which is things you have to memorize. So the first day they start with, well, here are the 3 things you have to memorize. And then the next day is you have to have those memorized plus these things. And then the next day, and there's goes through every day of like your first 8 weeks. And then after that, you have to continue to memorize all those things. Plus there's stuff you got to learn every day. Right.
Yeah.
And it's very focused on professional knowledge. So in the first few weeks, there's some, how long you been in the Navy, all me bloomin' life, me mother was a mermaid, me father was King Neptune, I was born on the crest of a wave and rocked on the cradle of the deep. The hair on me head is head, and when I spit star.
Yeah.
Right? There's stupid stuff you got to memorize, but once you get into the academic year, it's all very professional knowledge. So, hey, tell me everything about the Aegis destroyer. I want a professional report at lunch on the Tomahawk missile. Now, what that means is you've got to sit at lunch with no notes and talk for 5 or 10 minutes about the Tomahawk missile with your upper class who've all studied this probably more than you have, and tell them maybe something they didn't know. right? So that there's a lot of studying in order to be able to give a good verbal presentation with no notes, no PowerPoint slides. You better be able to just talk about this.
Yeah.
Um, Great preparation though, right? For standing up and giving a presentation and being able to stay calm and be able to do that. So a lot of that's, I call it an extra class, right? It was more than a class of college work that you were learning and memorizing and having to repeat back. And that was one where you got yelled at if you didn't get it right. Hey,
Yeah.
if I just get a C on the test, that's okay. Nobody yells at me.
Yeah.
But if
Well,
I miss the
yeah.
professional knowledge stuff, man, I get nuked from orbit.
Yeah. Well, that was like, I remember the first thing we had to learn was our army number. And boy,
Mm-hmm.
you never got that wrong. And then you just got to remember. And then they just keep piling it on. When I went to so that's phase one, the infantry training. Phase
Yep.
two is the trade training, so that's the technical. When you're learning about demolitions, bridge building, mine warfare, water point, water supply in the field, combat engineering. Then you do trade training. I trained as a plumber and pipe fitter. We have bricklayers in the engineers. We have all because when you hear of a troubled area in some part of the world and it needs rebuilding urgently, they send the engineers in, obviously with the infantry and artillery. Well, they send us in as a battle group. And I remember uh, way before there were word processors, right? And the engineer report when I did my field sergeant's course, and it was unusual I did my field sergeant because I was in bomb disposal then, and they don't do the field sergeant's different. That's coming back to combat engineering. Because I'd been a combat engineer in the first part of my service, I did this and to the extent that so your writing was really tidy, you would put a ruler at the line and write on the ruler, so everything was perfect. And when you're doing like 5, 10,000 words, that's a lot of time, as well as all the diagrams and everything. So I'm totally with you. It's about preparation, isn't it?
Yes, right. Well, and so this academy experience, I think, very good. And I was I chose computer science as my major. That's really been a great decision for me going forward because the computer science degree really put me on the cutting edge of a lot of technology and has
Yeah, of
resulted in
course.
doing what I'm doing today. Um,
And tell me about that computer science degree and how it sort of set you up, because from the conversation I've had with you, you're very methodical, you're structured, you do a lot of planning and preparation before you deliver. So your career didn't happen by accident, did it? What was going on when you were taking the science degree, and
yeah,
how did that equip you for what you do
Yeah,
now?
so I think the computer science degree was only the second year was offered at the academy. This was in the 80s, right? Computer science was a new field.
Yeah,
There weren't, this wasn't like everybody wants to do computer science, right? And maybe I've read some stuff recently about the market being saturated for computer science majors, and it's not worth what it once was. But for me at the time, that was great. Um, Partly I picked it because I had an inclination for it. I like to program, I like to do that stuff, and so the computer science degree was a degree that I could do well in. But it also, gave me some fundamentals technically about how the information technology world works that really still stick with me today because fundamentally all of the information technology we are doing today is based off ones and zeros, right? It's all
yeah,
binary.
yeah,
And so the fundamental computing principles are very much the same. The technology is hugely different, but the fundamentals of how this works, and I still find today that those fundamentals help me, better understand and better get stuff done. Um, when I graduated in the Navy, air, surface, and subs is your big three. Um, I went surface, so I was a regular old U.S. Navy ship driver. In the US Navy, different than the Royal Navy, engineers and deck officers are separated,
all
right?
right,
So
okay,
Yeah, so in the UK Navy, always has been this way, right? If you're going to be the chief engineer of a destroyer or an aircraft carrier or whatever, that's a career track. Engineering is a career track.
Yeah,
And if you're going to be driving, right, you're a deck officer, that's a career track.
yeah.
And they're separate. In the US Navy, they're combined. I
Right,
actually like the Royal Navy approach better,
right.
um, because it's hard to be an expert on engineering and ship driving.
Yeah.
Anyway, the US Navy, that's the way they do it. So I actually, in my tours, I started in engineering. I actually qualified in steam and gas turbine engineering plants in the US Navy for my first and my second ship. But then I also drove the ship a lot, right? So I had a job in engineering, but I was standing watch on the bridge, is kind of the way that worked out. So I got to you know, be the officer of the deck in a minefield in the northern Persian Gulf, delivering fresh food and vegetables to the minesweepers in a
Right.
frigate. You know, anyway, but some exciting times
So
there
that
on
so
the.
that keeps you sort of awake, doesn't it?
Say again?
That keeps you awake.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I was very young at that time, right? So that was in the early 90s in the first Gulf War, and I was still an ensign. So unusual for an ensign to be approved as officer of the deck, because that's the guy who's driving the ship when the captain's asleep. So that, that's pretty
Yeah, so
high.
that's pretty important role.
Yeah, it's a high level of responsibility, and I was very young, and um, we had just gotten it. So I qualified under the previous captain. We'd just gotten a new captain like 3 days before. And so here we're doing this evolution. We're told to go up into the northern Persian Gulf, following the swept channel, um, because they'd laid mines there, right? And we had several ships hit mines. For anybody who doesn't remember, you probably
Mhm.
do, but Joe, but others may not, right? Tripoli, Princeton, we were actually, I saw them. I was within visual range of
Yeah, that
them
was tough. That. Yeah.
when they hit their mines at times. So anyway, we're going up there, narrow swept channel. I'm on a steam single screw ship. So
Right.
there's no, this is very World War II technology. So the frigate that I was on was built in the early 60s, very steam powered, very World War II. I can go on like Gloucester or Alabama is down here and go, oh yeah, that's a
Yeah.
boiler, that's the main reduction gear, this is the lube oil pump for the main reduction gear. Oh, I recognize all that stuff. Anyway, what it means is if you want to stop, you have to fully stop the propeller from turning and then get it to go in the other. Maneuvering a single screw
Yeah. Yeah.
steamship swept
Yeah, because
channel.
you've got no opposite pull, have you? You've only got the one.
Yeah, you've only got the one, and I can't do left and right engines either,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Hey, so exciting stuff for me after I graduated as a surface officer.
Fantastic. So, what happened then? Because you had an interesting change, didn't you? What was going on in your mind about how you wanted to take your career?
Yeah, so some of the now this is luck and opportunity, right? Or so preparation and opportunity. So I
Yeah,
did two ships. I came up for shore duty. Um, Part of my luck was um, I got assigned to the National Security Agency for my shore duty. So in the United States, the um, uh, Bletchley Park in the UK, right?
yeah,
The cryptographic
yeah.
piece, right, which is now held in GCHQ, Government Communications Headquarters, which is down in the south, big donut building for the UK. Um, that lives in your Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what we call in the United States the State Department.
Yeah.
That it doesn't live in the military. In the United States, that capability lives in the Department of Defense.
Right. Okay.
Because between the First and Second World Wars, there was a Secretary of State in the United States that killed the State Department's capability completely. And the military, the Army and the Navy at the time said, hey, we need this. So they built their own capability, and rolling forward even to today, different than most countries in the world, in the United States, the National Security Agency is a part of the Department of Defense, not the Department of State, which is an interesting difference. And it has had some interesting legal differences in terms of working with the UK, which is, you know, and UK military, right? So
Yeah.
So I sort of, that was my shore duty, and I got assigned there. I actually had a cryptologic warrant officer who'd been standing watch with me, and I had been bringing along. He was an older guy, but getting qualified was part of he had never really been to sea. He, lives in windowless buildings, and he was on our ship, and I sort of took him up as my junior officer of the deck and trained him in so that he could get qualified. And so he really helped me out, get prepped and get all my stuff done and be able to get to the National Security Agency. So that was really, a great opportunity for me, and got to do a lot of different things. So
I want to pop something in here because I think it's relevant, and I think at this point you could bring it out more. One of the things that I believe in greatly is having a good coach or mentor. Now, you just mentioned the chap who introduced you to the sort of stuff that you do now, which we're going to talk about in a minute. How important do you think a good coach or mentor is to?
I think it's hugely important. And I think that one of the problems with my own career, I would have done better if I had realized it earlier.
Yeah.
I did not realize how important coaching and mentoring is, or having a coach or a mentor, until about the time I retired from the Navy.
Right.
Now, it is what it is, and I had heard people talk about it, but I didn't really get it or understand it. And so I agree with you completely, Joe, that, as a young person coming up, associating yourself with people who are a rung or two ahead of you, not 10 rungs ahead of you, but a rung or two ahead of you, who you look at them and go, that guy's going to be successful. That guy's going to go places, or gal, right? That person is going, they've got their act together, and I want to be associated with them. And it's also kind of related to the idea about surrounding yourself with good friends, right? So if you're friends with people who have self-destructive tendencies, who bring themselves down, who everything is bad and everything isn't their fault, you need to move away from those people. Those people pull you back.
And sometimes that's difficult, isn't it? Because when I'm coaching my clients, just the same as you do, or coaching the people who I come into contact with, one of the first things we look at is, who should you see more, who should you see less, and who should you cease and desist seeing.
Right. Yeah, that's I think a lot of young people don't realize how important that is. Right? Hey, you've got to associate with the right people, and that starts young, and kind of looking at those people and going, okay, where's that person going to end up? And associating yourself with people who are going to end up in good places as opposed to not good places, right? And so maybe your mentor really isn't a friend, but that's a person who's a rung or two ahead of you in life, whatever that is, right? A couple of ranks in the military, but other ways in the civilian world. And that person is going places, and I want to be associated with them.
And interestingly enough, because I love listening, and if we go back to the scenario where you're sitting during your lunch talking about the tomahawk to guys, men and women, who are maybe 2 rungs higher than you, and you've got to tell them something that they may not have known. That's your first part, isn't it? I mean, because the military training teaches you stuff that you don't even realize you're learning. It wasn't about just the tomahawk, was it? It was
Oh no.
about the connections you were with, and they were putting you in a group where you had to step up.
Yes. Yeah, no, and that's I was just slow to realize
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Hey, me too, me too. Yeah,
I was very much, it's about the tomahawk, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's all about the thing. It's about the technology. It's about the today's mission, right? Very focused in that way. And I was slow to appreciate the human interaction piece of this,
yeah,
how important this is. Um, Really, it's all about the people. It's not about the technology. One of my favorite sayings now is Army Special Forces has the four Special Forces truths, but the first one of those is people are more important than hardware.
yeah.
And in the IT and cybersecurity world that I live in today, right? Super technical, quantum encryption, people are more important than hardware is still just as true in that space. So no matter what we're trying to do, I would rather have, I've said this before, I would rather have the best people in the world and no money for software or hardware or the latest server or the latest cool tool or whatever. Because if I have the best people in the world, we're going to download freeware and we're going to modify it. We're going to have, you know, a Death Star killing battle station built from scraps if that's what it takes. If I've got the best people in the
Yeah,
world,
yeah, yeah, of course.
and so even in highly technical arenas, and it's one of the things that I see in the cybersecurity space. They talk about CISOs, chief information security officers, and their difficulty in communicating with the business is kind of a standard trope, which is true because you get these guys that come up through the technical field and they think about it in technical terms.
Yeah, yeah.
But really people are more important than hardware, right? So we what's the people aspect of this, right? How do I arrange my people in the best way? How do I make sure that I talk about having people in the right seat on the bus, right? So when we have members of the team, how do we put them in a position to win?
Mm.
That's the most important part of this, not the technology.
Thank you. So you've given a taster of what you do now. Before we move on to that fully, your story on the transition is interesting. How did you find the transition? How difficult or how easy did you do it? And how did you capture, cultivate a situation that made it more enjoyable to transition from the military to civilian street?
Yeah, it was hard. Um, Harder than I thought. So I retired as a commander, right? So a relatively senior officer. Um, Lots of responsibility, right, etc. Um, and a certain amount of credibility in the service, right,
Mm,
because of your rank and because of what you've done and your professional reputation and all that, right? And then so I retired and um there was a number of things that were just interesting, maybe very challenging, but interesting, right?
yeah.
So one of those was that the civilians didn't respect my service. They
Uh,
appreciated it, right? So in the United States, sort of since the first Gulf War, we've had a very strong, thank you for your service sort of culture in the United States. And so it's not like it was in the 60s and 70s where it was actually very anti-military. So
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, it's not anti, but they appreciated my service, but they didn't think it was relevant to anything that they did. Right? Their concept of what I was bringing to the table from a skills and capabilities perspective was generally, yeah, that was cool, but I can't see how that's relevant to anything. Do you know that we have budgets here and we have to like actually do work
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the civilian world? And I'm like, I think you've been watching too many John Wayne movies because you have budgets in the military too, and there, as I would put it, it's a lot of cubicle living, particularly in my field where we were cryptologists, right? I was not sleeping on the back of a tank during the exercise, right? There's a lot of cubicle living, and I got a boss, and I got a weekly activity report, and I got blah, it's very corporate in some ways almost,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Not always, right? And we certainly, there were those days, driving the ship across the formation in the middle of a storm. But even that builds leadership skills that are relevant to the civilian world, right? In the civilian space.
yeah, yeah.
So the first thing I was a little taken aback by was the lack of um, understanding on the civilian side. So that's just something I think people have got to be prepared for. Now, if you land in a military contractor that has a lot of retirees, et cetera, then maybe that could be different. But in the regular, cold, just civilian space,
Yeah.
appreciate you for your service, but don't really understand what it brings to the table. And so that's something you're going to have to work on,
Mm.
demonstrating, helping them to understand that, no, I really have skills and capabilities to bring to the table. We can handle this. I think that's one. The other thing, and what I really wanted to talk with you about, and we've had lots about me, but is the cultural aspect. So I think the number one thing that I talk to transitioning veterans about is culture, right? So we hear about culture, etc. Now, every military service has culture, and usually every branch, like you talked about combat engineers, right? There's a culture that's a little bit different or unique in its own way from the general army culture, right? It's a subset of that,
Yeah.
but it has its own aspects. In the US Navy, I would argue that the submarine community has a culture, and the pilot community, the air community has a culture, and the surface community has a culture, right? And there are other, and I was later a cryptologist. The cryptologic community has a culture. And so all of those, think of the culture as how we work together as a team in order to accomplish the mission,
Yeah.
right? What are the norms of how we do that? Now, I was extraordinarily lucky in I learned a lot in an assignment.
I saw you process that word then, Lucky.
Yeah.
I'll
And
give you that one, yeah.
yeah, when I was assigned to Menwith Hill Station in the United Kingdom,
Yeah.
right? So if you drive on the A59 outside of Harrogate, there's a bunch of golf balls. That's where I was at.
Right.
And in that um, tour, I was working with various different US military services, various UK military services, and civilians, various civilians, right? GCHQ, NSA, blah, others.
Yeah.
And so each one, what I found was each one of those had its own culture. So I
Mm.
had a good story I think I shared with you previously, which was we had an Army major who came in relatively new
Yeah.
from the regular Army. And we had a young sailor who did something, missed something, got something wrong. I forget. The Army major had the sailor do push-ups. Okay, fine. You got to do 50 push-ups because you screwed up. from an Army perspective, this is very normal. This is part of our culture. This is
that's
how this
okay.
works,
Yeah,
right?
bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'll do 75, sir. Hey, it's part of the culture. The civilians freaked. They wanted to have him fired, kicked
Right.
off. This is a horrible, mean, terrible thing that has been done. A crime has been committed. And the Army guy was like, what are you talking about? We're playing, right? But the difference was culture.
Yeah.
In the civilian culture, this was a major foul. This is someplace you could, some kind of physical thing. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, right? Not allowed. But in the Army culture, hey, drop and give me 50. It's pretty normal. And even from the Navy guys, that's not a strong part of our culture, but we weren't offended. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, okay, the major made you do push-ups. Well, I guess you know, you had to
Yeah.
do push-ups.
I guess you did something wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I guess you did something wrong. Right. It wasn't. So the cultural differences. And what I observed was every one of them of those different bins had a different culture, sometimes that had significant differences,
Mm.
but they all were getting the work done. Right. So it's a different approach. Now, I think we have honed our cultures, Navy, Air Force, Army, for the particular missions that we have to get done. There's
Yeah.
some aspect of that. Hey, like the culture in the Navy of standing watch and what the requirements are and how you do that is very strong in the Navy.
Yeah.
Because it's particular to our, mission accomplishment. But from a general perspective, when somebody transitions, you have to be very conscious of the culture. The
Yeah.
culture you have lived in for the, past 4 years or 20 years or 30 years, whatever it is. And the longer you've lived in that culture, the more deeply ingrained and blind you are to the fact that that's cultural, not just the way the world works.
Because like you guys over in the United States, like in the UK military, the way the army grades accommodation is whether we've got a bed or not. The way that the Air Force grades accommodation is how many stars it's got. Is it a 4-star, 5-star hotel?
4 or 5-star. We don't do 3-star unless we absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a cultural difference. So
Mm.
so every transitioning service member, you've absorbed the culture of your service, and you see it as good and right, as the way things should be done. You just have to be aware the civilian culture is different, and this can also vary by subculture. So not all civilians are the same. I talked about a company that has a lot of retirees may have a little bit more military friendly or structured culture than a straight up, civilian firm. I worked for Procter and Gamble, right? So a global BMF,
Yeah, big company.
like Crest and Duracell and hair products and all kind oil Olay and a bunch of stuff, right? They manufacture all this stuff. No military people, very teeny tiny fraction
Yeah.
of military or former military in Procter and Gamble, and no retirees. But no, there was absolutely 0 people. There was no other military retiree in Procter and Gamble with 100,000 people. They're very different, right? So they have their culture. So I just hate the biggest takeaway for veterans transitioning is when you get out, the culture is going to be different. That's going to be spend your early days at a new job sort of listening and feeling the culture. Try to look for it and say, hey, Sally screwed up. Jane, her boss's reaction to Sally screwing up was X.
Yeah.
Don't think of it in terms of right or wrong. Think of it in terms of, okay, how is the culture different? Right? How did they approach that problem?
Yeah, yeah.
What do I need to be aware of on how I might need to be calibrating my own approaches and reactions to things? Because as the new guy, we got to adapt to the culture that's in the organization. The organization is not going to adapt to me.
And that's like respecting someone else's approach, because it's their perspective of the situation, isn't it? And it's how they've been brought up, and it is certainly cultural. To the equivalent of press ups might be right. Let's just have a one-to-one and let's see what happened and what caused that. Whereas it might just be give me 10. And I know because I was a physical training instructor in the military, so those words just rolled off my tongue dead easy.
Give me 10, right? And so yeah, that cultural aspect, I don't think I've heard other people really talk about that. And to me, that's the biggest single thing for
Yeah.
transitioning military is realize the culture is different, not necessarily bad. Although I think all of us military guys would look at civilian culture and find some things that could be improved. Get it?
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you got. Yeah. I know what you're
There are
thinking.
aspects of the military culture that are superior to the civilian culture. I get it. But you're going to have to adapt and live in that world now. You got to live in the civilian world. And so think about it that way.
Yeah, and it's like when I've spoken, because it was interesting because you mentioned like when you came out and you've been a commander and at a high level, and when the civilians are talking, you say, hey, look, it's not as if I've been asleep or on the back of a tank. Even the guys, like when I talk to someone who's been in a mortar platoon, right? Right, you might not go around in civilian street just dropping mortars on people. The fact is, though, to be able to do that with a mortar platoon, battalion, you need to have got to the right place at the right time, know what the target is, and you've got to have a whole load of stuff. And if you can implement the correct culture and observe, first use two of these, one of these, you've got two ears, one mouth, use the ears first to listen to what's going on before you even think about saying something.
Right. Observe first, listen first. Absolutely. Particularly in that new environment. Because like you were talking about in mortar platoon, right? But there's training. We've got to organize the training, right? We've got to, have the party after the training. We've got to, there's all these things that you do that's not just dropping a mortar in the tube. And that are relevant. And you've been building skills, and I think in particular leadership capability, and gotten more leadership training than those civilians will probably get in their career. In a standard enlistment, you probably got more leadership training than the civilians, or actual organized leadership training than the civilians will ever. Certainly in the, the NCO course, the sergeant's course, right? You're getting leadership training.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like to say is that the technical skill in shortest supply is always leadership. That is always the technical skill in shortest supply, absolutely everywhere in the world. Use your leadership skills.
Yeah, and let's put a word in front of leadership, like good leadership, which is, yeah. So that's great. So GCHQ, you work in there. I mean, you did mention that quite a few. There were four things that you thought, like civilians didn't respect your service. You noticed that. The cultural thing. What else was there that you found?
Yeah, was hard about that. So that one of the things was I had to earn back, sort of starting at the bottom and climbing back up again, right? So because they were like, hey, we appreciate your service, but we don't really respect that you have any skills to offer. So I had to claw that back over time.
Yeah.
Right. I did have to, adjust myself to the civilian culture to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Even though I was better prepared for that because I'd had the opportunity in the military to serve in lots of different cultures and sort of had this, brought to the fore previously. That was very helpful for that. But it was still, still changes have to be made and you got to adapt, and adapting is always hard. Let's see what else, from a military perspective, transition. We talked about mentors earlier on, and I think that's also true in the civilian space, right? So, if you go to big corporate in particular, you should be looking around for who's that person that's one or two notches on the rank above me that can help pull me along, that I can align with, that can be, potential mentor and guide in the future.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, go on. Go on.
one more thing that was big surprise to me. Civilians are rank happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, so in transition, this was a perception I had of coming from the military and going to the civilian community, right? Is that the civilians are not rank happy. They're very, well, we want a flat organization. Nobody wears rank. That's so military. We would never do that. And what I found out was they like to act like that, but underneath, they're super rank happy. They're more conscious of their privileges as an associate director. I made it to the big time, right? Than any Navy commander would ever consider being, right? Maybe
Yeah.
not ever consider being, but just super sensitive about that. And it was a big surprise for me.
Yeah, well, actually, you've hit the nail on the head. For me, I found that the higher the rank, the more pragmatic and thoughtful and respectful of other people,
Yeah.
the individual. Like,
Yeah, no, that's probably true.
Brigadier, I used to love chatting with brigadiers because they were experienced. They'd walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And the other thing is that in the military, it's quite clear. Whatever you've got on your arm or on your shoulder, you know how much experience that person's got, unless they were just sidestepped and just got promoted to get them out of the way. The majority, though, got promoted because of their skill, experience, and the way that they could command men and women. And like what I've seen now as well, talking about rank happy civilians, I'm really pleased, like, because we met on LinkedIn. I always go straight to the bottom of the experience. That's a tip, right? For me, anyway. I'm not bothered about what you're doing now, per se. I want to know what you've done to get you to where you are now, if that makes sense. And the reason we hit it off, I think, is because we were able to look at our experience. And what I'm pleased to see now is that more and more military and ex-military are starting to put their experience into commercial speak, if that makes sense. Because being a field sergeant or EOD, explosive bomb disposal, effectively, or a commander in the Navy, that means little to any civilian. So when you're able to translate that into civilian speak, I think that is
One thing I would add to that, so I think that needs to be done, and we are seeing more people do it. I have seen people take it too far.
right. Okay.
I ferret out what they really did. So leave a few Easter eggs in there for the other military person to be able to pluck out and go, okay, now I understand where he fits.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do that, it becomes hard to really understand what because it becomes very generic and over genericized. Then I really can't tell. Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me what you really did.
Yeah.
And you realize you're trying to speak to the civilians because they don't get it. But
And that's a great point, actually, because I've had to decipher exactly what they did from that in the military, because it's sort of clouded over. So it's great to be proud of what you did in the military as well.
yeah, too right. So don't work too hard at that. Would be my only
Yeah.
thing. I think
That's a great tip.
translate it so that they can understand it because they won't we all get it when we say first sergeant. Okay, I got it. We know where that fits and level of leadership that's required to get there and all that stuff. But leave some of that in there so that other military people can also get that clear insight of what you've done.
Great point. So here's one for you. Because your life was a complete and utter dream from the word go. Nothing went wrong, did it? You just had a complete great time. You got up in the morning with a smile on your face every morning, no challenges, right? So let's just put that to the side at the minute, and just accept that you may have had one or two challenges. So how do you deal with failure?
Yeah, so how did I deal with those? What were my biggest challenges? Uh, boy, I think my biggest challenge, I would say today is that I was an introvert, right? Or a very technically minded person, right? So we talked about not picking up on mentors, etc.
Yeah.
And so I had a very, by personality, I had a very narrow view of that. And the military is about teams. It's about all of us working together, etc. So learning that was a big challenge for me. That was very hard. Um, we also had some things that just sucked, right? And sometimes we got to embrace the suck, and we just got it. We got to power through. Now, this is something I think from a military perspective, we get trained in that opportunity lots, right? But it also lives during the transition, right? Um there's problems, right? There's places where so for example in the surface community, man, the US Navy surface community culture is horrible in my view. It's just
Right.
not good, right? And it sometimes, so you gotta burn through. You gotta, okay, we're gonna keep doing this. We're gonna keep doing the best job that we can. We're gonna keep pushing until we get new opportunities, right? And luck is preparation and opportunity,
Yeah.
right? So hey, how do I prepare? How do I look forward to make sure that new opportunities present themselves? Um, I've some of my transition aspect, right? So I got out of the military at the 20-year point. I moved into civilian world. I went to work for a university, not for profit, hung off the university, and the laboratory director there was stealing the money, and I had to tell the university, right?
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was really bad. Um, so that kind of hurt, right? That was hard. That was, man, but maintain your integrity, do the right thing, continue to push forward. That set me back from a transition perspective, right? Um, so there were
Let's just hang on in there, right? So, I mean, having to do that, and you had to develop some skills, didn't you? Communication skills to get that across, and especially if that's uh, affecting you mentally, psychologically as well. I mean, what was
well, it's
going on?
hard. Well, yeah, that was just an incredibly hard journey for me, and it's one of the things. It's made me death on integrity issues. I was, all of us military guys, I think, get trained in the importance of integrity because people
Yeah,
die if we don't do this
yeah,
right with integrity, right? Um, but even more so now because at first it was no, really, that can't be. How would that be? And so that coming to that conclusion was very difficult. And then finding the right way to deal with it was also
mm,
very.
yeah, I bet. So, thank you for sharing that because that must have been a tough time. And how did you deal with it? What was the strategy that you adopted? Like, for instance, in the engineers, we say build a bridge and get over it, which is quite an easy phrase to say.
I
Actually,
know. I like.
you like
so,
that?
for the first thing on that, right? So this is potential fraud. I think you can't just make an accusation like
Mm,
that. You gotta have some detail. Um, I'm an old intelligence professional, so I created and conducted intelligence operations in order to confirm or deny this theory, and get some hard data on what was really going on. Um, and then I was able to take that to appropriate places in the university and get them all started on them. Eventually, that came down to uh, you know forensic auditors coming in to look at the problems. But that was my approach to that, because first thing you gotta know that this is a problem. I had an enormous challenge of, do I stay or do I go? Right. I had been working to build some programs. We were actually spinning technologies back to special forces. We were doing some really cool work. We had some great technology development things that we were absolutely doing some really great cutting edge stuff that I think was important for, future military operations. So that's hard to walk away from, right? Man, we're building a great thing here. Unfortunately, that was devastating to the organization across the board. And what I did there was, it finally blew up right after I'd reported it. When that occurred, I quit and started my own company.
Right. Okay.
And failed to be able to make my own company go. I have my own company today.
Congratulations.
My logo is in the Zoom, but that was something I had an idea that I wanted to do. I've been working towards that. I just wasn't able to make it go then.
Yeah.
And what I did was I said, okay, this isn't working. I got to pay for the house. I got to put food on the table, etc. I got to do something else. I went back to big corporate. Not really back, but I tried big corporate then. And ended up having a series of different. Big corporate wasn't a great fit for me. I went to Big Four consulting. I did that successfully. Both of them I think were successful. I just wasn't having that great a time.
Yeah.
I got lured back to Oklahoma to start another university not-for-profit, to be the director of it this time. The university ended up pulling support for that late in the game. Long story, happened. And then I started my own company again. This time with better experiences. And I can really say that my experience in big corporate and in Big Four consulting, huge value add to my knowledge of how this works in the corporate world. And so I learned a ton, right? So I'm a retired naval officer, and I'm talking about learning a ton. So this is the other thing, when you transition from the military, the learning is not over, right? You need to be learning every day, and if you're not learning and growing every day, you're falling behind.
Because every day is a school day, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
We had, and so for me, I look at the 10 years between 2010 and 2020, which is when I left the military and when I started my fourth company. I started two not-for-profits in the middle. One of them went and one of them didn't go, but it was good. It was all volunteer stuff. But in that 10-year period, what did I learn? Well, I learned a ton about the civilian world. I learned more about culture. I learned way more about how business actually works, right? And that's a little different than, having a small company is different than having a company in the Army, right?
Yeah.
The both similar, hey, I've got 200 guys here and 200 guys there, and I've got a person who's in charge. So the company CEO is the CEO. It's the same.
Yeah.
And we sometimes we try to equivocate that when we're doing our resume. It's not the same. There are differences. Just like you wouldn't take the CEO of a small manufacturer and give them command of an Army company and expect them to do well. Would anybody do that? Hell no. Don't expect, because you were the, captain of the commanding officer of a company in the Army, that somebody's going to make you the CEO of their small business either.
Yeah.
there are differences, not better, worse, etc., but there just are differences. Critical in the transition for you to learn what those differences are. And that 10 years gave me a ton of knowledge on that.
Thank you. So on the basis of every day as a school day, the question was how you deal with failure is about recognizing what your lack of knowledge is, the shortfall, whatever the shortfall is in a quality education or something, and then how you deal with success. The secret to success is being able to recognize what you need to learn and embracing that. That would be the secret to success, would it?
Plus this.
I love that. Never give in. The best of Winston Churchill's speeches. Wow, love that. So you've read that. Good.
I actually really like this book. It's a great, because it's speeches. You can just pop it open, read a speech from, 1931.
Yeah, what a guy. Yeah.
In history, when Winston Churchill was given this speech, right? But the never give in piece, Winston Churchill, when he was out of power, right? So he got voted out by Labor post World War II. He came to the United States
right.
on a book tour and college speaking tour. And he came to Missouri before I was born. But I read about it later, and it really stuck with me because he came to the University of Missouri, which was near my home. And he gave the graduation speech. And here is one of the greatest orators the world has ever seen, right? Since ancient Rome, is going to give a graduation speech. And, I can see the hall is packed and are all these people there. And Winston Churchill gets up and says, "Never give up," and sits back down. That was his whole speech. But everybody memorized the speech, right? He got the point that he thought was the most important thing for those graduates was to never give up, right? That's the thing. So again, sort of in my, hey, the first place I worked kind of blew up on me. I went to work someplace else. We've had these trials and tribulations. The never give up is actually absolutely a part of that as well.
Yeah, that's great, because I think it's important to never give up, isn't it? Because it just emphasizes the importance of perseverance. And also it's an interesting subject, never give up, or it's an interesting phase. There has to be a point where you recognize what is important to not give up, and then what is important to recognize.
Yeah, there's a balance here between never give up and no plan survives contact with the enemy.
That's right, yeah.
So changing your plan is not giving up.
No.
Right. So for recently here in the United States, I was called over to invited to a meeting with a small company, technology. Hey, Vince, we wanted your input. And I gave them an input that was, hey, you're trying to chase too many different opportunities simultaneously. I want you to focus on a couple of opportunities and go win those and then add more, right? And they were the person running that company was he's not going to do that. He wasn't going to give up on any one of those potential opportunities. Let's say he had 10, potential opportunities where his company could meet those businesses' needs, etc. And I said, don't chase 10, chase 2 and win, right? Put all your effort into getting into those 2 and then look at expanding out. And he would not change his plan, right? So you can't quit, but you can change the plan. And sometimes you got to chase that opportunity, right? Yeah. So like in my company right now, we've very much done that. We've adjusted the business plan quite a bit from what I originally started with.
And I talk about that in the program that I wrote called a Pathfinder Ultimate Success System. And it's about success is a journey, not a destination. And sometimes the A to B might be A diversion and B. So long as you recognize that it's still the same, you just got to improvise, adapt, and overcome, and then
Yes.
build a bridge and get over it, because it's not going to be, as you said before, life isn't fair. It's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And success,
And be doing great.
yeah, success is hard at times. It can be good as well. It can be easy, but a lot of the time it's hard. So, I want to talk about what you're doing what your business is now and what you concentrate on, because I think it's really interesting. Before I do that, could you just give me an understanding, an inkling of what one top tip you would give to someone, to a listener, whether they're a veteran, still in the military, or in fact, just someone who needs a leg up in business and maybe they're having a bit of a challenge? What's the one tip that you would give?
Make yourself an expert. So this is what does that mean? That means that if you are in bomb disposal, right, and this is your thing, and you're a sergeant, and there's a bunch of other sergeants, how are you making yourself the expert, the go-to guy, the person who really has mastered this in putting in that effort, right? So one of the things I did as a cryptologist, I think pretty well, was, man, I was damn good, right? I was the go-to guy, even as a relatively junior person, in several places and ways, because I made myself the expert. In my current business, we do that,
Yeah.
right? That is, hey, we're going to be the experts in this stuff, and that means we got to read, we got to study, we got to focus, we got to dig in to really understand and really be the best at what we're doing. Conversely, and I ran across a great example of how not to do this, and I had a person working for me in the civilian world who had a job for 2 years. I was her new boss. We sat down and she was telling me about herself and what she does. We said, but I'm not, when we were, I started to ask them some questions about some aspect of her role, and she said, well, I'm not the expert. And I was like, you've had this job for 2 years. Why the hell not?
Yeah.
And this is your role in the company where nobody else is doing this role. It was a relatively small group in that stage. And so don't never be there. Hey, I've had this job for 2 years and I'm not the expert. I'm not the person who, I haven't mastered what I'm doing.
Yeah.
There's no reason to go 2 years and not be better than everybody else, for sure, at your area, your thing, right? Whatever that is.
And that's an interesting point, because while you've been talking, that triggered something in my head, and I'd like your opinion on this. When you're at school, right, or college or academy, and especially in your former years, because teachers tend to say, because I remember them saying to me, work on your weaknesses. Now, I don't tend to do that now, because what I recognize is I want to work on my strengths and get a team member who can do my weaknesses. So that means we're invincible. You can't touch us because we've got it covered.
Yeah, I agree on that completely. Play to your strengths and make your strengths stronger,
Yeah.
right? How do I grow? Hey, I've got some capability in this. How do I grow that? It's a very narrow and deep philosophy, back to being the expert, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be the expert in everything. But I love your philosophy about, hey, I'm going to build my strengths and I'm going to get team members who are good in areas that I'm weak, and I'm gonna respect and utilize them. That is the way to win.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we agree on that. Now, just going, because I want you to talk about your business now and what you do and how you help guys, because I think it's fantastic, it's fabulous. To open that part of the conversation, I want to go back to a phrase that you mentioned before, which is people are more important than hardware. And building on that, give me your insight into what AI is doing, and is that going to threaten the world and everyone's going to be unemployed, or what do you think's going on there?
I'm a little skeptical about AI. So I see AI today, like all technology, in that technology supports the human actor, right? So computers, word processing, pick a technology, lights, cars,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Technology is important, right? But it supports the person. It is not an independent actor or agent. And there's a lot of speculation about self-aware AI of the future, the whole what was the movie Terminator, Skynet worry. Maybe there may be some place in the future where AI gets initiative, but it certainly isn't today. And the in working with AI right now, I don't see AI taking people's jobs. I see AI making people better at doing their
yeah,
jobs,
yeah,
or enabling them to do their jobs better, faster, because they can process more information, they can look at stuff better, they can do this more quickly, that kind of stuff. So now that may mean that if I had 12 cyber analysts at Procter and Gamble and I've harnessed AI well to look at all the data that we have coming through for the global footprint, that maybe I only need five,
yeah,
cyber analysts now, but the cyber analyst isn't going to go away. Is sort of my point in that,
yeah,
which is another time to be the best cyber analyst.
yeah,
Right? Make yourself the expert, right? It's a really great time to have that. But I don't see it as as replacing people. It's not going to replace people. What
yeah,
it may do is make individual people better, stronger, faster, which means I can do the same work with fewer people than I could previously.
yeah.
But it's not going to eliminate them.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I totally agree. As no someone knowing far less about AI than you do, I totally agree that often people get the knee-jerk reaction and get the wrong end of the stick, instead of just sitting back and looking at it pragmatically and taking a logical approach. So yeah, I think I'm
And
being
sometimes your and mine's sort of pragmatic outlook on this. I love another Brit, Bill Bryson, who writes a number of books.
yeah, yeah.
You haven't read A Short History of Nearly Everything or listened
Oh
to it
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
That's really great. But the point that I took away from that book is how many times the brilliant experts throughout history were dead wrong. Right.
Yeah,
So we hear this today, and well, the greatest experts say,
yeah.
look back historically, they have a horrendous track record of being wrong.
Well,
Just saying.
yeah, and well, being a financial advisor since 1988, I can look back on economic forecasts made by economists, people who were really educated, and none of them got it right. The forecast,
No,
because it's just a
right.
forecast, it's an opinion.
Right. That's just an educated guess. Come on, guys.
Yeah,
And they, hey, the computer model shows, and they make it sound like it's a mathematic impossibility to have any other answer. Well, no, the computer model has got a whole bunch of guesses you made underlying the model.
yeah,
And if you guessed wrong, then the model is off.
yeah,
So that in AI land, I'm still a little skeptical. And I'm not with it's going to take over the world and we're going to have Skynet, and it's going to replace all the people. I don't see that occurring. But it is going to be transformative. It is going to make changes. It's another technology
Yeah.
that is going to change the way that we do business and things. Um, and we'll just have to see how that plays out.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, from your perspective and where you are now, and I'm going to go into a little bit more about what you do. How transferable do you think the skills are that you learned in the military to what you do now in civilian street?
Hugely transferable. Mine are a little bit better aligned than most, I would argue, because one of my mantras now is that I used to play offense and now I coach defense.
Yeah.
So in the cyber warfare world, right, one of the things I'm doing is taking, cyber warfare from an offensive capability perspective and bringing that back to from a mindset and outlook perspective to civilian companies who really need that, who really don't have that, right?
Mm.
Most cybersecurity people either grew up in compliance or IT. In neither of those is offense. So they're trying to do defense and they maybe don't understand the philosophy and outlook and capability and how that really works as well as maybe they think they do. So that's part of what the overlap of my skills. Now, one of the things I don't talk about though is that, so I said I started out as an engineer on a Navy ship, and one of my on my second tour, I was the head firefighter. In the U.S. service, they call that the damage control assistant. I worked for the chief engineer, and I was in charge of all the firefighting, flooding, etc., making sure the ship keeps fighting after she takes a hit, right? And I like to say that I learned everything I needed to know about cybersecurity incident response, like how do I respond to cyber attack, as the DCA. And what's the relationship between being the head firefighter and cybersecurity? Well, it's a crisis. I've taken a hit. The ship is a system of systems. And what do I need to be able to do to be a good DCA? I got to understand the system and I got to understand how it all fits together. So if I
Yeah.
take this part out, what's the effect on the business? In the military or in the Navy, that was what's the effect on the gun going bang and the screw going roundy round,
Yeah.
right? That's the business end of this operation. Well, in the civilian world, there's a business end, whatever that is, and maybe that's website sales or maybe that's something else, right? So how do I understand that system of systems, put it back online as quickly as possible, and get the business running and then repair damage? That's very much like cybersecurity. So that's, I think we can bridge our military experiences, which are focused, disciplined, attention to detail, often technical, right? How does that, I got to understand how this system works and bridge that into civilian roles and responsibilities. And so I think even barring my direct cyber sort of correlation, which is a little different, a ton of what I did as a military officer, I think translates. The civilians just don't appreciate it.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much. So what does we're coming to the end now, and we could carry on talking for absolute ages.
Yeah, no, we could carry on all day, but I got to go.
Yeah, and I've got to go as well. So, what does the future hold for you now? What's your next mission?
So I've got a couple things going on, right? I'm building my company. So Defense Cybersecurity Group, we provide cybersecurity consulting services to defense industrial based contractors. So people building stuff for the military. And we also provide now part of my change in plans, right, is we're actually providing IT services as well and building that out. Well, I'm going to build that company. And with a goal of I want to take care of my family and I want to take care of the people working for me. So one of the things I think civilians are missing out on, we have a strong culture in the military. If I take kids who are 18, 17, 18 and stupid and don't know very much, and we build them into capable, NCOs and leaders of the military of the future, right?
Yeah.
And that training and bringing them along is part and parcel of what we do. The civilians largely have lost the sauce, at least where I've been operating, in that they want to hire somebody with 5 years of experience for entry-level wages. They want them to have every certification and qualification and be a full up round. I just want to plug them in and use them like a cog in the wheel and then throw them away. That is largely the civilian model of human capital strategy. It's very unfortunate. So one of the things I'm trying to do is bring kids in, younger men and women.
Kids is okay. Yeah, kids is okay. Yeah.
If any of them are offended, I still call them kids, right? And give them opportunity, give them training, give them opportunity to grow, help them grow and meet their goals and what they want to do with their life, not necessarily just linked to what the company is doing today, but hey, what's going to make you better in the future? Where do you want to go? How do you want to grow? Let's look to give you opportunities to grow in that regard. Good leadership stuff, right? And so I think that's my biggest thing right now. I've got some give backs going on. I'm helping with Naval Academy admissions. I'm working with our local community college on maybe some more cyber training stuff and how do we do that for local kids and youth and get them into the pipeline. So I've got a couple of not-for-profit sort of things going on out there, but really the company is my focus right now.
Yeah, and the reason I do this as well as the other stuff is because my mission is to help 1 million veterans and business owners, entrepreneurs achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they want, because that's a legacy, right? And the same as what you're creating is a legacy. So finally, how can people get in touch with you, Vince?
Yeah, so we have a website. It's Defense Cybersecurity Group is the name of the company. And we are www.cybersecgru.com, Cybersecgru. Naval Security Group was the home of cryptologists, and it was always called SecGru, S-E-C-G-R.
Right, okay.
So I'm cribbing the old naval shorthand for my website, but that's where we're at. There's an info page, email. You can send an info. I actually read those. Send an email in if somebody wants to get in touch with me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for your time and making this podcast so interesting. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate being here.
And remember, if you want to discover more about resources to help you get better in business and in life, visit joeteams.com, because to successful become, visit joeteams.com now, and there's lots and lots available. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day. Thank you. joeteams.com is a resource I've created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. joeteams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit joeteams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's joeteams.com, Joeteams, joeteams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.